All right, let's go ahead and turn to this extreme weather that we saw with horrific, deadly consequences in the middle of the country. Kentucky and Missouri, in particular, really hard hit by this strong line of tornadoes and storms. We can put some images up on the screen here. 26 people are dead after these tornadoes hit in those two states. Here's some footage from USA Today. They say deadly tornadoes leave a trail of destruction in Kentucky. There you actually see the tornado itself. They say this is Scott County, Missouri. Here, this is terrifying. Part of an apartment building just blows apart like it's made of absolutely nothing. We've got some of the aftermath here. I'm not sure if this is Kentucky or Missouri. I think this is in Kentucky, but I'm not 100% sure. But you can see just the level of devastation. And this is in London, Kentucky. Looks like it was a small airport there. You can see the debris and wreckage of some of those small planes that were just absolutely torn apart. And, you know, this obviously is really significant in and of itself, just given the loss of lives, at least 26 people dead that we know of at this point. But it also has raised some real questions about the impacts of DOGE cuts and whether there was sufficient warning given or whether more lives could have been saved if the relevant weather office there, which had experienced these cuts, had been fully staffed. Ryan Hall, who's a fantastic weather YouTuber, Kyle's a big weather guy, he watches him all the time on YouTube, was astonished that there hadn't been sufficient warnings put out at the time as he was covering this live. Let's go ahead and take a listen to a little of what he had to say.
What we're talking about here is a big deal. I am so surprised that we don't have an upgraded warning from the National Weather Service. One of the things that I do want to mention is I'm pretty sure this is the National Weather Service in Jackson, Kentucky, my local National Weather Service here. This is one of the places that's understaffed right now. I don't know if you guys have been following the news, big layoffs across the National Weather Service and stuff like that. That might be a result of a problem that we're having there. If so, that's crazy. That's crazy. We're about to have a large tornado go through a very populated area with much less warning than what there should be as a result of that. Guys, all I can tell you right now is if you know anybody in Somerset, call them right now and let them know what's going on. I'm not kidding. Like, this is a big deal. This is a huge deal. We've got a massive tornado about to slam through Oak Hill, Bourbon, and Ferguson here.
And he was absolutely right in the dire nature of those warnings. That Kentucky Weather Office, they say scrambles for staffing as severe storms bear down. New York Times write-up here. Washington Post had a write-up as well. National Weather Service office in eastern Kentucky was scrambling to cover the overnight forecast on Friday as these tornadoes were moving through much of the eastern U.S. According to the union that represents the department's meteorologist, Tom Fahey, the legislative director for that union, was one of four that no longer had a permanent overnight forecaster after hundreds of people left the agency as a result of cuts ordered by the Department of Government Efficiency. Mr. Fahey said on Friday that because of the threat for flooding, hail, and tornadoes facing eastern Kentucky, the Weather Service had to find forecasting help for that office. A spokeswoman for the Weather Service said the Jackson's office would be relying on nearby offices for support throughout the weekend. So, Emily, that's the lay of the land here. Now, I will say that the government is claiming, no, this did not impact. They were able to fully staff. They were able to have the coverage that they need. But, it certainly raises questions whether lives could have been saved if this office had been fully staffed and not subject to those DOGE cuts.
It does. I mean, there should be an investigation. And I think it's crazy, Krystal. I mean, this always happens with tornadoes. You lived in Kentucky briefly, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so you know this. It's whenever there's a snowstorm in New York, I actually, like when I used to teach students, I would use this as an example. Whenever there's a snowstorm in New York, it's national news for days. A tornado can rip through the heartland, kill 28 people, and it's a blip on the national news radar because most of the newsrooms are in New York, they're in DC, they're in LA, and the gutting of local media means that there are just a few newsrooms that are kind of concentrated in big cities, like St. Louis, for example, throughout the Midwest, but the main producers and editors and everything aren't there. And so, I mean, this is getting to the bottom of whether or not these cuts actually may have resulted in a loss of life. I really hope that national media is sending people, is paying attention to the local media, is sending people out to get to the bottom of this, because it's a hugely significant story. And it's one of those things that when you look at Elon Musk and the way he's been parading around with the chainsaw at CPAC, for example, that Melee gifted him, it's never been funny, right? It's not funny. It's 80% of federal workers are outside of DC, and I say that as somebody who loves the idea, like in theory, of DOGE. But like you're actually playing with people's lives, and it'd be one thing if the Trump administration had tapped someone like Russ Vought, like a type of like policy person, to do it. But they went with Elon as the figurehead of it, and it just gave the whole project this sense of what's the right word for it? Like, I don't know if casualness is the right word, but
haphazard,
this sense that like, and he has openly said that his strategy involves mass firings, and then if you realize you need to bring people back, then you bring people back. Like he said that's the way to do it. Basically, is that like you learn who's essential after you fire them. On a nationwide scale, I mean, we're talking about one of the biggest countries in the world, one of the biggest countries that's ever existed. This massive piece of land with a huge population. That's a really, 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 really dangerous game, and that is obvious to everyone. So I'm really curious. I mean, maybe it turns out that they came in overnight and they staffed up because they realized these storms were going to be bad and this would have happened no matter what. Maybe that turns out to be the case. But when you juxtapose it with National Weather Service cuts and Elon Musk parading around with a chainsaw, it's a pretty bad look.
Yeah, well, and here's what I would say too, is I do think some of the cuts were just completely haphazard, but even with Russ Vought, like Project 2025 took direct aim at NOAA. And there is a ideological project on the right that would like to see some of this weather tracking privatized, so that we don't all, Ryan Hall and everybody else who wants access to the data doesn't get access to the data. You have to pay for it. There is an ideological agenda behind it as well. So it's not just random that these offices get hit with cuts, the National Weather Service gets hit with cuts, and NOAA overall gets hit with cuts. There is also an ideological project behind it, and this is the fallout from that project, or demonstrates what the potential for the fallout could be from that project. There are a lot of things the government does that, actually are effective that we just don't think about, like they do track the weather very effectively. It takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of people. It takes, these weather balloons going up, which also have been cut significantly. But actually, they have done a pretty good job at that. And that is now being put at risk. We see it also, with the air traffic controllers and the horrific situation, with the FAA. Again, this is something that is a life or death issue that we really depend on the federal government for. And when it doesn't function, when it does function, you don't think about it too much. When it doesn't function, suddenly it becomes really front of mind if you want to, go somewhere for Memorial Day weekend and be able to actually, get where you're going and not be terrified of what's going to happen when you're trying to land. And there's another, let's go ahead and put this FEMA piece up on the screen because this is, connected, obviously. You have a newly appointed head of FEMA, and Trump has been—
FEMA is a mess, like a mess right now.
I think everyone, and I think anyone who's been associated with FEMA would have said going into this administration there were things that needed to be resolved.
Yeah.
Trump has an ideological agenda against FEMA at all. He thinks this should be basically dismantled and it should all be sent to the states. Now, if you have a minor weather disaster, states may have sufficient funds and resources to handle it. When you're talking about increasing extreme weather events year after year after year, you need the federal government just for resources sake to be able to assist, and states do not have the capability to be able to respond. So this is coming, there was some leaked information coming out of FEMA that the newly appointed head says the agency does not yet have a fully formed disaster response plan going into hurricane season. I'll read you a little bit of this. David Richardson, who previously served as a senior official at DHS, does not have a background in emergency management, told staff he would share a hurricane plan with Kristi Noem after he completes it late next week. He said Thursday he's 80 to 85% done with the plan. Agency is already months behind schedule in its preparations for the hurricane season, which starts June 1. and is expected to have above normal activity. Richardson said in a recent meeting with FEMA staff that clarifying the intent of the president, who has called for terminating the agency, was a challenge in preparing a strategy for hurricane season, according to a video recording of the meeting that was viewed by the Wall Street Journal. And there was another wild quote in here, Emily. He was apparently asked during this town hall meeting if the will of the president or the well-being of Americans was more important. And he responded, I think those two things are essentially the same. So this is a Trump loyalist, yes man, whatever, and FEMA is dramatically behind in preparing for the impending hurricane season.
Yeah, the Reuters headline 3 days ago, staff losses and low morale are derailing FEMA hurricane preparations, internal document says. And then there's another headline. This is 2 days ago as well. Trump's firing a FEMA director unsettles GOP senators. And the Republicans made a big deal, rightfully so, of the FEMA response after the hurricanes in
Helene,
after Helene, North Carolina, South Carolina last fall. That was, reasonable. Everyone was right to be outraged about the FEMA response there. So if the FEMA response to these tornadoes, which have now killed 28 people, is lacking, Trump is going to hear from the senators in those states, Republican senators in those states. He's going to hear from the governors in those states, Republican governors in those states. And what's interesting, Krystal, is that's the type of thing that will start to change the permission structure for DOGE and for massive cuts if Republicans are saying the way you are going about these cuts are worse than just continuing to spend at the same level.
Yeah, well, and
which is not impossible, by the way. That's the thing. You can, again, I support the idea of DOGE in theory, and I would say, in some cases, these cuts are you can still end up when you're making cuts that are necessary, or that I think are necessary from a perspective of just a more limited government perspective. You look at it and you say the cuts themselves can be worse than the status quo, because they're done in a way that is cruel. And one thing I wanted to mention is if you are in DC, you don't understand how important the emergency warning systems are for tornadoes and saving lives, because people rely on them to make a judgment about where to go, what to do. Do they, get out of the soccer carpool and go home right away? Is it that serious? Or are they upending, everyone's routine for something that's not serious at all? The warnings are important to that if you live in the Midwest or in the South or in an area with tornadoes. And if you don't understand that and you're just saying, we will fire people, then we will learn and rehire anybody who's necessary, people get caught and fall through the cracks and tragedy happens.
And some of his strongest supporters, in terms of states, have already been impacted by the denial of FEMA assistance. So flooding in West Virginia, FEMA denied assistance for windstorm damage in Washington, not a Trump state, but FEMA staff said there's no longer a clear process for assessing assistance requests from states. They're concerned disaster victims aren't getting the help they need. In Arkansas, they were initially denied funds, but Sarah Huckabee Sanders is now the governor of Arkansas, so she was able to go to Trump and say, please, we need these funds, and eventually they relented. But if you don't happen to have a personal relationship with apparently our sovereign monarch now, then then your residents are going to get screwed. Including, in a state like West Virginia, which I covered here, that flooding was apocalyptic. It's the worst they've ever seen, the level of disaster, and it hit the poorest part of an already poor state, which has been screwed over and left behind, many times over. And so denied assistance for flooding there is, it honestly, to me, it shocks the conscience. But this is the direction that they have gone in, and they put in just, a Trump sycophant at the head of this agency who was apparently unprepared for the hurricane season. So, it's unsettling. It's very unsettling to see things that were previously taken for granted. And again, not to say FEMA was great or perfect. We've all seen, what happened with Katrina. We saw the inadequacy of a response in Helene, et cetera. But once again, you're taking something that needed work and you are eliminating eliminating it entirely or making it vastly worse. And I think, this is an indication of potential things to come.
Yeah, with a tone of flippancy and, joviality. Like it's just all a chainsaw game, which is probably why Elon Musk has sort of stepped into the background, because they realized
he's quiet lately.
It wasn't,
he's devoting his time to reprogramming Grok to talk about white genocide and deny the Holocaust, apparently, is what he's spending his time doing now.
He's got all kinds of stuff to do. He's a busy man, Krystal. Let's move on to this is going to be so interesting. I'm really excited about it. Arjun Singh, who joins us to talk about the history of how Republicans became an anti-tax party, fundamentalist anti-tax party, and what that means for today.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.